I just want to talk a little bit about a graphical user installation before we do it, and talk about why we're doing it. So a graphical user interface is something that we can visually see, like the desktop, and it has a mouse and a visual user interface for us. So if you think your traditional Windows or OS 10 environment, where you're sitting at the computer and you have that desktop in front of you, you're seeing graphics. There's lots of eye candy and windows that pop up. That's what a graphical user interface is. To contrast that, you might have a command line only interface, and all that gives you is a terminal or a shell that you're typing commands at. Obviously, one is more user-friendly, perhaps, and the other, you can get more power. You have more control over your various settings. So why are we learning to do a graphical user interface install? Well, this is how you would do the installation if you wanted to run Linux on your personal computer. Probably if you wanted it to, if you went and bought a machine with a hard drive, a blank hard drive, you wanted to install a Linux operating system on it, this is how you would do it. And it's very common to know how to install a operating system is an important task for IT administrators. Now, we aren't going to have a physical piece of machinery for you to work with. That would be, it's much too cost prohibitive. We can't buy a hard drive and a tower and a motherboard and all the components necessary for a computer so that each student would have their own machine. But we can use what's concept of a virtual machine. And essentially, this is where perhaps I buy a machine that has a lot of computing power, a lot of RAM, and you just use a segment or a portion of that RAM and computing power to run your own machine. And so it's really an emulation of a physical machine. It allows us to install without having to worry about the hardware. And this is also very, very common to do. There's a lot of virtual machine software you can even download on your Windows machine, and you could run Linux as a virtual machine inside of your Windows operating system. And there's a lot of other ways you could do that, but this is a very common task to run and to learn how to use virtual machines. And one of the reasons for that is because they are so easy. You treat them like a file. You can delete that file and make backups of that file and a ton of different things, but there's a lot of reasons for using virtual machines. That's what we're going to use. Now, in order for us to connect to our virtual machine, we're going to use a program called VNC. And this is just a program that allows us to view our new desktop or GUI instance. Now think for a second, you're not sitting at your physical machine to do the installation, because I just said we don't have enough hardware for that. So how are you going to connect to my piece of hardware to do the installation? Well, VNC is a program that allows this, that basically it connects to the remote. It connects to your desktop on my machine and takes that display and brings it over the network so that you can see it on your local machine. So we'll show how to do that in the next video. First, we're going to learn how to build a tunnel over SSH, and we'll talk about why we're doing that in the next video. And we're also going to make sure we pay attention to port numbers as we do this. A couple last things before I leave this. Once we have our own machine, we can then have administrative privileges on that machine. Our first user we set up is going to be an administrative user. So we're going to use a command called sudo or sudo super user do. It's a command that allows us to do anything on that machine. It says, I'm the administrator, do this. So an example would be install a package. And so one of the first commands we're going to do is sudo apt install some package like perhaps gvim. Okay, so that's where we're heading, and the next video is going to give you a demo of how to set up that virtual machine and how to build a tunnel.